It's easy to be safe when things go right. But what about when things go wrong? When the car breaks down far from a gas station or civilization? Or for when a hiking trip turns into getting lost? John Olds of Rising Phoenix Martial Arts is a martial artist and a friend of mine. He's been on my podcast, I've been on his, and he's an enthusiast about wilderness survival and primitive living skills, and he's here to talk to us about it today on Safest Family on the Block. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Safest Family on the Block. I'm your host, Jason, and joining me today is John Olds of Rising Phoenix Martial Arts. Now, I've known John for a while. He's a longtime friend of mine, longtime friend of the show. He's a multiple black belt holder, martial arts school owner, all around badass and good guy. But today he's here to talk to us about a wilderness survival. And so, could you tell the folks a little bit about your credentials and experience and passion for that particular set of safety skills?
Yes, sir. I started doing wilderness survival with my older brother back in the day when I was just a little kid. I ended up going to the tracker school, which is run by Tom Brown Jr., who's arguably one of the best trackers in the world. The government used to use him to track down really top level criminals that would go into hiding, and he is the student of a really well-known Native American and learned a lot of skills from him. I also trained under Thomas Gowski and helped him start Midwest Native Skills Institute in Ohio and learned a lot there. And I also trained under Ray Reitz, who's a well-known Maine guide and also a Native American trained, and also a good close personal friend.
Excellent. So this has been, as you said to me in conversation before, that your first passion is martial arts, but your second, a close second, is wilderness survival. And they're really kind of the same thing, where there's a threat and you have a plan for managing that threat.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first question out the gate is, so how tempted have you been to apply to be on one of those shows like Alone or Extraction?
I'm not a glutton for punishment, and you know, it's interesting. My older brother is was probably a little more interested in that kind of thing. But yeah, I definitely sometimes see those things, and I say, is this really wilderness survival? Especially like Bear Grylls, like some of the stuff he does.
Yeah.
It's a little more about the show, but of
Mhm.
course, we got to make it exciting, for everyone back home watching.
Yeah. I have a similar relationship with some of the family safety advice we get from the high-end operators, where you're looking at the technique and say, hey, that's cool. That shows off some things you know. But how would a rational person, let alone a rational person responsible for children, ever end up in a situation where they need that particular skill? There's a lot of the wilderness survival stuff that you know and would teach mean that you never need to pee into a rattlesnake skin to hold that moisture for an extra day, for example.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like martial arts
Mm.
where you, it's not about having to use it, it's about being ready just in case that happens and the confidence that you gain from having that knowledge.
Yeah. And I would suspect, because I'm not much of a survival guy. I was in the Boy Scouts until I got about 16 and realized camping with girls was much more fun. But
Yeah,
so I have a couple of merit badges, but not a lot of experience. But my
sure.
general viewpoint is that the skills that you develop, the like specific skills, the hand sword chop or the rear naked choke, they're there for you, but it's the mindset of recognizing danger, preparing for danger, and knowing you have a plan that lets you see earlier and think more clearly. How much does that apply to the wilderness survival side?
Um, Specifically, can you
Yeah, sure. That
go
just
deeper
that
with that?
there's this array of specific skills that if A happens, then we do X. But
Yes.
the whole process of studying it and having that awareness and that analytical mindset means that A never happens.
Yes. Okay, so maybe this is a good point to talk about the sacred order, which is sort of prioritizing what you need to do in a survival situation. So the first thing is shelter, because let's say you're in a really cold environment or a really hot environment, the thing that's gonna really get you is exposure. So the first thing is to find shelter, and that could just be literally like a cliff ledge, or it could be making a full-blown debris shelter. Second thing is water. You can't live very long without water, so that's really important to find water. And that could be a lot of different, there could be a lot of different ways for getting water, like a solar still or collecting rainwater. But the best would be obviously to find a source of water. And then the next thing, surprisingly, is fire, because fire is going to be really important for alerting people that you're out there. But the thing that people don't realize is fire is a great source of confidence. And a lot of people end up dying in the woods because they give up. And so being able to make fire will build your confidence. We like to say in wilderness survival that it's like caveman TV, having that fire out there to keep you company. And then finally is food. People tend to start with food, and that's actually where you get in trouble, like, eating something that's poisonous, and not knowing how to prepare things that are poisonous when not cooked. Most things, if you boil them, are actually edible. So as long as you boil things, and I can explain how to do that, you should be good. And once you understand wilderness survival, it's not like going out there in a tick-infested wilderness and living miserably. It's going out there with your people in your paradise and reconnecting with your roots. And that's really what survival at a high level looks like. And that's why sometimes those TV shows like Bear Grylls was painted to be this horrific experience. I think are really missing the point. The Native Americans and even the contacted indigenous people that are still out there in the wilderness are not living miserable lives. They're living lives like that can be quite pleasurable, maybe a little shorter lived, but quite pleasurable for their time on this earth. So, but it's just a matter of perspective and a matter of learning a few simple skills. So anyway, the sacred order: shelter, water, fire, food. Important to remember, and it also can be variable. Like if you're living in a temperate area, maybe shelter is not that important. But one of the main ways that people die is actually hypothermia. And so shelter can look kind of different. Like one of the things that's really important is to get up off the ground. A lot of homeless people die from hypothermia because they sleep directly on the ground, and the ground is about 60 degrees at all times. Depends on where you are, but it's about 60 degrees. So you're gonna get all of your heat wicked out of your body. So the most important thing is actually to make a bough bed, some kind of bed to get up the ground. Bough bed is when you take a bunch of little boughs, you break them off the tree, and then you just lay them down. It's actually like the best bed I've ever laid, and it's so good. Once you've made one, you're like, wow, I can't go back to a real bed. It's surprisingly good. And then the next thing would be to get the rain off your back. And to do that, a debris shelter is your best bet to get started. Lean-to is what everyone does. Like Boy Scouts learn lean-tos. They're horrible shelters. No offense intended. They can be good if you have a fire. And especially like a lean-to with like a reflector wall can be quite useful. But if you don't have a fire, which you're probably not going to have unless you know how to make a bow drill, and making a bow drill with like roots and stuff is challenging. So the safest and fastest way would be make it just a debris shelter. And you can do that by just literally taking like a Y stick and putting another stick like this, and then just take like sticks and rib both sides, and then just pile on as much debris as you can find, leaf litter, moss, whatever. And the thing that people make a mistake is they'll have like a stick sticking up out of the debris, and the rain will go onto the stick and go down into the debris shelter. But if you hide all of the sticks, so there's nothing sticking out, and you have as much debris as your from your fingertip to your armpit, that's how much debris you need to insulate your shelter from rain. And that's why it's so hilarious when I watch some of these TV shows and they're making these shelters and they got like this much debris on it, or they couple leaves, like, banana leaves like this. I'm like, that's not going to do anything. You need like literally like 3 feet of debris to make a proper debris shelter. But when you have a good debris shelter like that, it can be, especially when you first make it, infested with bugs. But if you're able to make a fire, and then take a burning stick and stick it in there. You can smoke out all the bugs, and then it's quite pleasurable. You get your bow bed down in there, you slide in there. It's like a little mummy bag, and that will keep you safe for a long time. Um,
And that 3 feet of debris, we're not being picky. We're just picking up whatever litter we find on the floor
yep,
and
yeah,
put it
yeah.
on there.
Shoveling up
Leaves,
with your
moss,
arms.
dirt,
Yep, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
because
It's
we're
just
just looking
stuff.
for raw isolation. I wanted to
Yes.
go back and emphasize a point you made about having insulation between you and the ground. The
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact physics words, but I know that the ground seeps energy and heat out of us faster than air, which is
Yeah.
why if you're stuck out in the woods and you have one blanket that's only wide enough to cover the top of you or the bottom of you,
Mhm.
I think counterintuitively you want to lay on it, not put it
Yes.
over you.
Yes,
That's
sir.
how much difference the
That
ground
is true.
versus the air
Hmm.
makes. And
Yes,
then
sir.
even a rude shelter like the one you're talking about, which is just a little layer of sticks
Hmm.
covered with mud and dirt and grass and whatever you can find. Uh, you know, the length of your arm is best, but as much as you can get, every
Yes.
inch makes it a little more survivable.
Yes, sir.
And we're talking about, with you were talking, you mentioned earlier about what this is about, and people think it's this miserable experience, and I think some people, your car breaks down in Death Valley on August. That's not going to be pleasant. It's going
Sure.
to do more than tickle. But I
Yeah.
think there's the going out into the wilderness for the experience of the wilderness, the experience of sharing the wilderness with your family. And for a
Yes.
lot of other families, having some of these skills and some tools in your pocket is for when your car does break down in the desert,
Mhm.
or you lose traction driving to grandma's house through the snow, and
Mhm.
who knows how long it's going to be until somebody gets there. And
Yeah.
so, these kinds of skills aren't just for wilderness enthusiasts. They're for people who like the air conditioning in their Nintendo,
Yeah.
because we don't know when we might be called upon.
Well, it can be a great way to get away from some of that stuff too and
Yeah.
connect with your family. I think it's when I was a kid, me and my brothers and my dad would go out into the woods and we would make shelters and have camping experiences, and those were some of the greatest times of my life. So and it taught me a lot about having grit and um just being more relaxed and more connected. So yeah, it's really powerful. So what I was gonna say just a second ago is something to remember when you're going to the woods is how long you can live without certain things. So people tend to think a lot about getting food quickly, and that's actually not very important. You can live 3 weeks without food. You can live a long time without food. You can live we have a saying of threes: 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So really, if you're prioritizing things, that water, like getting a source of water, is really important compared to getting food. And if you're looking for food, there are some, I mean, honestly, the forest is a garden. There's food everywhere. All you need to do is know how to find it. But some of like the big things that you can look for. So I kind of break it down into two things. There's like snacks and then like meals. And if you're looking for like snacks, those are things that you'll find as you're just wandering around that are like pluckable and eatable. You look for like wild raspberries and blueberries and um, like gooseberries and snowberries. Those are going to be really good, and they're pretty easy to find and pretty safe. Like there's not a lot of stuff that
Yeah.
looks like them.
And I can guarantee you that with 10 minutes of internet research, whoever you are listening to this show, you can find either a short class with your Parks and Rec or a free class with some enthusiast that will help you identify the edible berries in
Oh,
your area.
yeah.
Absolutely.
You got to go out with a Peterson's Field Guide, and that's actually
Mm.
really fun. And then look for wild edibles. And if you were like me and my older brother would take me out with Peterson's Field Guide, and he'd look and he'd be like, "I think I figured it out." Okay, Michael, I go by my middle name is Michael with my family. He'd be like, Michael, you have to try this, and I'd be like, "Are you sure this is edible?" So he would like kind of watch and see if I die.
Yeah.
Then he's like, "Okay, that seems like that's the right one."
Yeah, I
Um,
have that. My wife actually spent a year picking mushrooms up in British Columbia for a living. And
yeah.
so she'll find some out on the trail and pick some mushrooms, and I'm like, because
Yeah,
mushrooms are
mushrooms are a
particularly
little.
high risk, high reward.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't mess around too much with mushrooms, but
Yeah. You got to have absolute expertise with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, the berries are great for snacks. And then if you're looking for more of a meal, acorns, most things when you boil them are really good. So like acorns, you boil them and then you smash them up and you can like make bread out of them and they're really good source of nutrition. Believe it or not, stinging nettles are amazing. You can find fields of stinging nettles. And all you gotta do is boil them. You can honestly eat them raw. You just gotta be really careful. Like get them entirely inside your mouth before you start chewing, because if they touch the outside of your mouth, they'll start stinging you. But you can literally eat them raw. Boiled, there's some of the highest nutrition of any food out there. Even like dandelions. Dandelions, you're out in the field, you find lots of dandelions. Those are actually very nutritious. So things like that, those would be good sources. And then, simple ways to catch animals would be like setting snares. You can make a snare out of like basswood. So basswood, you lay it in the water for a little bit, the bark becomes soft, then you would take it and you would reverse wrap it. I can't really go into that exactly with in a podcast like this, but you can figure that out.
I'll bet you there's 3 YouTube tutorials.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you would use that to make a snare. Now, obviously, like wire would be better for a snare. The harder the rope is, the better a snare it makes. But and you just tie that to a tree and you pull the bough down. You find like a green sapling, you pull it down, and you put it right over a run, like someplace where you see animals moving through, and then you catch your animals like that. There's a lot of really cool deadfall traps that like the Paiute and things like that you could use to catch small game. And that would be a good source of nutrition for like a long-term survival experience. But like I said, you have 3 weeks to figure that out. And if you can make a fire, you're probably going to get out of there before 3 weeks. Most people, get rescued before then. And the people that don't, they died before that because they did something not quite right, like they slept directly on the ground.
Yeah, I think an important point about that order, the shelter, fire, water, food. Sorry, shelter, water, fire, food. Like you say, you can survive for 3 weeks without food, longer in some cases.
Yeah.
But there's also the point of degradation of skills. Like dehydration clouds your judgment much
Yeah.
faster than starvation.
Yeah.
And just have you ever tried to start a fire using a butane lighter if you were shivering, let
Yeah.
alone trying to do it with a primitive method? You
Oh,
want to
yeah.
have that fire lit before you're cold so you have all your faculties and all of your manual dexterity.
Well, people who haven't tried to light a fire
Yeah.
before need to like first try to light a fire in the fireplace. Then you
Yeah.
need to go out in the woods with a lighter and try to light a fire. And you will see it is very hard, actually. Because unless you bring a bunch of, and I don't mean like with newspaper, unless you bring a lot of newspaper, it's going to be a lot harder to light a fire. And then if I tell you, I want you to light a fire without anything, like you have to make a bow drill, this is way harder.
Yeah.
Making a bow drill from like a bough with like some either basswood cordage or like spruce roots are quite good. They're very flexible and they're great for lashing. Spruce are the ones that have the little like round conifer leaves, I guess you would call them. They're like the little segments that are round. Those guys have awesome roots. Anyway, you can make a bow out of that, but then you need to find like a splinter of wood, and then you have to make like a dowel out of another piece of wood, and then you have to do like this. And actually, even if you have a really good bow drill, doing a bow drill fire is very is a high level skill. It takes people usually a couple of weeks to learn how to do a bow drill well. But certainly it is doable. And I think that's one good skill to have because it's really hard to make a fire any other way. Some people, say, oh, we could do like flint and steel. Maybe I could find a piece of metal and then I can find a piece of flint. They're quite common. I'm sure you're going to find a piece of metal somewhere in this day and age, and you're probably going to find a piece of flint there is also very common. But the problem is that flint and steel requires you to have already made a fire, and that's something people don't understand. You have to have char cloth, which is basically like clothing that has been cooked in the fire without a lot of oxygen. So in order to do that, it requires you to have made a fire in the first place, and then you use that char cloth in your tinder bundle to make a fire. So I always see this in the movies, which is kind of funny. Like people have like flint and steel and like on like a branch, and then the branch just lights on fire. It's like that's not unless you have a blast match, maybe. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's very
And then,
challenging.
yeah, and getting that skill would be important. It's kind of like with martial arts, where, we train to kick to head level, but none of us would actually kick to head level if we ever do that. Actually, be in a confrontation. We practice kicking to head level so that that kick to knee level or that kick to the groin is just absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
And so, training to the point where you can start a fire reliably with a bow drill
Hmm.
means that when your car breaks down and you have your lighter in your jacket, that's going to feel easy.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Yeah, and the good news is it's number three. It's not
Yeah.
essential. It'd be a good way to signal that you're out there, and a good way to keep you entertained and motivated and feeling confident. But and that's why these primitive skills are great to learn, because they're going to build a confidence. Like I think that's what martial arts does too. Like
Yeah.
as you develop your martial arts skill, you have confidence to go into dangerous places. As you build your confidence in wilderness survival, you have the confidence to go out into the great outdoors. And you have both of those skills, you feel like, you know what? If the world goes kaput, I'm pretty good because I could just go into the forest and survive. And it's kind of very freeing, I think.
Yeah. Now, do you think there's in martial arts again? I call it the brown belt syndrome, where they're confident but overconfident, where they're kind of hoping they get in a fight and maybe make some decisions that they won't make 2 years later. Uh,
Yeah.
I see that in some reports with wilderness accidents too, especially up here in Oregon,
Oh,
where we have Mount Hood and the Pacific
yeah.
Ocean gunning for us 24/7, 365, where they get in over their heads and they're experienced, but not
Yeah.
quite experienced enough for what they attempted.
Back in the 90s, there was
Mm.
a real connection to Native American wilderness survival, and I feel like this might be a this may not be true, but this is my feeling is that, I watch a lot of bushcraft videos on YouTube, and kind of where the modern survival courses have gone is much more like Americanized. Like the word bushcraft is not a word that we used a lot back in the 90s. We used wilderness survival, and it was much more Native American based. And one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up is because that was kind of the Native American culture kind of informed the survival in a really nice way. So like we would always say thanks for the fire before and after making it. And we would say thanks for the food when we would kill an animal. It's a great sacrifice for them to give their life for us to survive. And I think that sort of reverence to the land is really important when you go out into the woods. And if you don't have it, yeah, you can get arrogant and you can go out there and say, man versus wild, I'm going to go out there
Mm.
and conquer. And I think that's the
Yeah.
wrong attitude. I mean, that's why when we first started talking, I was talking about how that's not what wilderness survival is. Wilderness survival is going out there and being one with the land, and reconnecting with your roots. And it's a beautiful thing. It's not to be conquered.
Yeah,
Tom Brown
the
used to tell,
nature's bigger and older than you, and cares a whole lot less if you live.
yeah,
We're not going to win that fight.
it's
We need
it.
to team up.
Tom Brown used to tell us this awesome story, and I might butcher it a little bit, but he said, one time he was out in the woods and he would go on these excursions, and he would just find a quiet spot in the woods and sit down and work on his wide angle vision, and work on sort of meditate in the forest and just wait for the animal life to come out, because when a human moves through the forest, everything hears them. He has this theory of the concentric rings, how the hares startle the birds and then they move, and I won't get into all the details there, but basically they alert each other and they go off into hiding as you're moving through the forest. So if you want them to come out, you either have to stalk through the forest, or you have to wait patiently until they don't sense that danger anymore and they come out. So he was out in the woods just sitting there waiting for the animals to come back out, and they certainly did. And literally, like, squirrel comes out and it's like running around at his feet and climbs up on his shoulder, and like a bird, like, like starts building a nest right by him, and he's telling the story, and he sees a deer come out and all these things. And then he starts hearing this trudging up. He doesn't even hear it. He sees all the animals leave, and he starts hearing this trudging of a couple of hikers coming up through the woods. and they come up and he's like maybe like a foot from the path, but he's covered in like leaves and stuff, and he's kind of like just sitting there, and they totally miss him. But he hears them say, "Oh man, I didn't see one thing up here," you know? And then
Oh,
they march off, and
yeah.
later, he's later he sees them in the parking lot, and they end up getting on the same bus,
Mhm.
and one of them is talking about basically the story is that how they missed everything, and he saw those things. But the second story here is when they get on the bus and they're driving away, one of them is talking about how he likes watching birds. And one of them says,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, I did see this one bird, and I can't remember what the bird was, but it was, some ground finch or something." And the other guy was like, "It's just a ground finch. It's just a, blah blah blah." And Tom Brown, like grabs him by the shoulder and like turns around, "Just a ground finch," and like tells them like everything about this bird, like how amazing this bird is. And I think that's what people miss, like you can take a plant like um, a dandelion, which most people just kind of overlook. Oh, it's just a weed. And there's like medicinal properties with the roots, and it's super nutritious. It's like a miracle food that's just sitting out there. And there's so many great ways to prepare it as a salad, but no one really pays attention to it because they just think, oh, it's just a plant, and it's
It's
way
just a
more than a
weed.
plant.
Yeah. Now, so we've talked a bit about shelter, we've talked about fire, we've talked about food. Water is the second one on the list, and one where I think a lot of folks go wrong, what with giardia
Yeah.
and dysentery and all of that. What can we do to secure that water in those
Okay.
first vital hours?
So there's a lot of misinterpretations about that. And as somebody who has lived in the woods for months off river water without any filtration,
Mhm.
I can tell you that you do have to be careful, but it is a lot less um, scary than you think. So, I mean, yes, if you're going off into like some um, Death Valley and there's a tiny pool of water with a carcass in it or something, yeah, okay, like that's super dangerous. But I'll tell you a little story. So we bring people up to the retreat up in Vermont, and I have these rivers that are spring fed that we have been drinking out of for like 85 years. And literally, the water that's pumped up to the cabin is coming from this spring. And I take a group of people through the forest, and I'm like, "Oh, guys, it's like kind of a rite of passage to get down and drink from the spring head." And I do it first, and then people start drinking. And one guy's like, "I'm not gonna." He was like a Boy Scout. He's like, "I'm not gonna drink. Like that's dangerous to drink out of the spring head." And I'm like, "Dude, I've been drinking out of spring head my entire life. My grandfather, my father all drank out of here. No one's ever gotten, giardia. Okay." And the reason why I think people have this phobia of water, and they just think, "Oh, I'm going to get it because it's everywhere." And there's certain things to look for. Okay. If you find a dam, like a beaver dam on a river, yes, do not drink directly around that. And you don't want to drink downstream from a beaver dam. But if you're literally find a spring head, like go ahead and drink that. That is very safe water right there. I mean, it couldn't be more safe. It's like coming, it takes like 20, 30 years to go all the way down to the ground and then come. It's like super filtered. It's like as clean as it gets.
Yeah.
So
And the
that
stuff, in most cases, the stuff that is flowing through to get to the springhead is basically what they make filters out of.
exactly.
Pumice, charcoal, lava,
Yeah.
right? It is,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So that's the safest. If you're in a wilderness survival situation, I would either find a spring, and it depends on where you are, but they can be quite common actually, especially in rocky areas. And then if you can't find a spring, you can boil water. I mean, it's not going to take out the metallic contaminants and things like that, but it's going to save you from most things. And I think most water boiled is totally safe. And I think people overreact to that. So boiling water would be good. If it's snowing out, you can boil snow. I'll tell you from first-hand experience that doesn't work out how you think it's going to work out. You're going to probably need to filter or just deal with a ton of grit in that snow. Even beautiful white snow, you think, oh, it's so clean. No, 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 that's not how it works. You drink that, it's like drinking bad coffee where the grounds are in it. And but you can do that. You can do like a solar still where you find a piece of plastic and you put it over the ground and it pulls the groundwater. You can collect things, you can get like a water basin. If you have a tarp, you find an old tarp, you can string it up in the trees and collect the rainwater that way. I'll give you some. If you do a lot of these things in connection, you can get together enough water to survive. Um,
Just a footnote on that. That's one of the thousand uses of those little Mylar survival blankets,
oh yeah.
which cost like 50 cents. And
Yes.
nobody should go have a car that has less than 10. And yeah,
Mhm.
you can string one of those from the four corners on a tree, and it will
Yeah.
collect a shocking amount of rain and
Yeah.
dew and such.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and there's just I honestly my recommendation would be to find a river. Rivers are good generally because they're moving water. They're fast moving water. And then you would just look around the river, like go up like 300 feet and look for a dam, go down 300 feet, look for a dam. If you don't see a dam, then say this is probably safe. Collect your water. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to find a log, like a big piece of wood. You're going to make yourself a bow drill. You're going to get some coals and you're going to put it on the log and you're going to blow on those coals and you're going to burn out a hollow of the log. Then you're going to take some rocks and you're going to throw it in the fire and then you're gonna rock boil. You're gonna take those rocks out with a couple of sticks, you're gonna put it into the basin that you've created, and you're gonna boil the water like that. And then that's gonna allow you to drink it. And that is how native people boil water all the time.
And another point on that, if you drink filthy water, it's a problem immediately because you're going to be retching that right up and losing other body water too. But for a lot of those things we worry about, your giardia, your long-term amoebic dysentery like that, it's my understanding our onset of that is a couple of days. And yeah, you might have diarrhea for a couple of weeks, but that'll be after you've been rescued.
Yeah.
And drinking
Well,
the bad water will help you make it to be rescued and then treated in a hospital who've got the
yeah.
pills for giardia and amoebic dysentery.
Yeah. I mean, you do want to be careful with getting Giardia when
Yeah,
you're out there because you will just
yeah,
crap your pants out and you
yeah,
will, like die from starvation pretty quickly.
yeah,
But the thing is, you're in the middle of nowhere.
yeah,
Like most of the contaminants are close to civilization. Like,
yeah,
even like okay, with down from like a wood mill or something. I don't know. Like there's a wood mill there. You can go to the wood mill and you can get help. Okay. So like most
yeah.
of the places that are you're gonna be lost are way out in the middle of nowhere. Like it's funny, I take people in Vermont, I take them on these big hikes through the wilderness and stuff, and people are like, "Oh, are we gonna get lost? Are we gonna get lost?" I'm like, "There's like no chance of getting lost. There are so many roads. I mean, probably from someone who comes from the city, it feels like really, really remote wilderness. And like the nearest town is like, 500 people, so it's small. But the thing is like, where do you get lost? I've almost gotten lost a couple times in my life. And where I got lost was like northern Maine
Mm,
in logging country, like where we took a dirt road. We drove down a dirt road for 5 hours.
yeah,
Like that's where you get lost. You do not get lost like going to like a national park that has roads all the way surrounding it and crisscrossing it and things like that. You get lost in like logging country where trees are literally growing on top of trees, like dead trees, and it's just this, mass of roots and dead logs where like literally you see like the earth like breathing with the wind. Like those are the kind of places and you'll know it pretty quickly when you're in a real wilderness that you can get lost in. But most people just don't have the experience. Like the same thing with the water. Like they just don't have the experience, so they just overreact and they get scared. I'm sure you've experienced this in the martial arts where it's like, what's really the threat, but the parent who's watching might have a different idea. Like, oh, this seems really dangerous. And you're like, actually, that's really safe. But that thing I did before that you missed, that was kind of dangerous. It was a little bit dangerous,
yeah,
and they just don't know what to look for.
yeah. Now there's a couple of different viewpoints on wilderness survival, and one of them is you go out into the wilderness to enjoy the wilderness, and something goes wrong.
Mhm.
You turn left when you should have turned right, and all of a sudden, a 2 day hike has turned into a 1 week ordeal.
Yeah.
And which is in some ways, we keep going back to kind of the metaphor of the martial arts. That's like in some ways going into a bar, grabbing the biggest biker in the room and telling him exactly what you did to his mother last night. You're
Mhm.
kind of asking for trouble, and you found trouble, and maybe you've got the skills to handle it, maybe you don't. I think
Yeah.
a lot of the families on the show, a lot of our listeners, this survival situation they're looking for is more like being mugged, where they're driving over a pass in the Rockies when they
Yeah.
blow two tires, and they've got to
Right.
hold on for 24 to 72 hours.
Mhm.
And for that kind of stuff, what kind of equipment would you recommend we just keep in our car for
Yes.
that sort of scenario?
Okay. Yeah. Survival blanket obviously would be really good. There's a lot of uses for that. String and a needle would be really useful. You can use that for fishing. You can use it to sew up wounds. Getting a nasty infection is a really big concern. Some matches, obviously. You have to have matches.
Now, why matches over, say, a good butane lighter?
Um, You can do things with matches
Mm-hmm.
that you can't do with a lighter. I mean, a lighter could be okay. I think at some altitudes, lighters don't work as well.
Oh, mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if that's true. I've heard that. But if you try to take a lighter and you try to light down, you burn your hand. And that's something that people don't really understand. Like when you're making a fire that's on the ground, your hand is going to go down like this. Whereas a match, you actually put like that. And the match itself is actually tinder for the
Mm-hmm.
fire. Um, I like strike anywhere matches. Those are really good. And a few of those. I mean, you wouldn't be bad with a lighter. You can make that work. You can light a thing, with the lighter and then you can feed it in. Um, but yeah, usually survivalists take matches. That's pretty common.
Okay.
Other things, a knife. I mean, a knife is absolutely essential. And when you talk about knives, like, we would go into the woods with a knife and a bag of grain and try to survive. And that is a really fun expedition.
Mm-hmm.
The knife you want is a full tang knife. Uh, Carbon steel, not stainless steel. Stainless steel is really hard to sharpen, and anyone who's tried to sharpen it knows that unless you have like a specialized sharpening thing that like creates like a nice speed for you, it's very hard to get a razor sharp edge on that. Usually you send it back to the manufacturer and they put that edge on there. But carbon steel is softer and it loses its edge faster. But that's what all the wilderness survivalists use because you can sharpen it very easily and you want it to be full tang and you want it to have a wooden handle. So those rock climbing knives that everyone loves, those are actually really bad survival knives because so one of the things you're going to do with your knife is you're going to split all your kindling. You're going to take your knife, you're going to put it up on top of a piece of wood, and then you're going to take like another piece of wood, like a club, and you're going to hit the end of your knife, and you're going to split down through the wood. That's how you're going to make all your kindling, and it's going to be really important to start a fire. And so having a full tang knife like that is very important. If it's metal, your hand will be like, it'll be like shaking, it'd be really painful. And if it's not full tang, it's gonna snap. So things like that, I would say. Knife is very important. You can do so much with it. You can take a knife and you can make like a fir stick, which is where you like bring up little bits of wood to make it easier to light that stick. You can also get at like fat wood that's going to be much easier to burn with a knife. And there's just a million utilities for that. So yeah, knife, string and needle, uh, the space blanket, the survival blanket thing. Maybe some antiseptic, maybe, because if you get a cut, that can be a really bad, fast way to go. Just like basically a first aid kit,
Yeah.
would be good.
It also occurs to me, and the recommendations I give with my loadout list for your car emergency kit includes, if you've got school-aged kids, a couple of coloring books or activity books, because that's going to be a long wait, and sometimes that's scary. Those can also be used to start a fire.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a good
So,
idea.
yeah. And what I
Um,
like about your kit is it's small. It's not a gigantic bag full of another bag to keep in the back of the minivan with the soccer gear and the karate gear and the violin and the extra pair of shoes. It's just a handful of items that you could keep easily in the car. Or if you got a jacket with a couple extra pockets, keep in your just have them live there in your coat.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's the gear you need.
And that's kind of fun to put together your survival
Yeah.
kit. It can always be evolving. I have friends who are like super into that, and it's
Mhm.
like, this is the ultimate. This is my new ultimate survival kit, and that can be fun to think about all the different ways you can
Yeah.
use things. Um,
Yeah. But I appreciate I've noticed that on my show where I talk to enthusiasts and I talk to professionals. Like I
uh-huh.
had a very knowledgeable enthusiast give me like a 23 item first aid kit for your car. Then I
Yeah,
talked to a professional EMT. It's like five things.
yeah,
It's like
yeah, yeah.
well,
You don't
what
need that much. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Like what about a tourniquet? Most of the time you'll be wearing a tourniquet if it comes to it. Take your t-shirt off, grab a long stick and go. It's a
yeah,
but
yeah.
anyhow, yeah. But thank you so much for all this information. I know you're enthusiastic, but you also won it the hard way. And before we go, tell folks where can we find you? I mean, if you're in the Kyle, Texas area, John runs the best martial arts school in town, bar none. But where else can they find you and your information?
So you can find us online at risingphoenixtkd.com. We also have a YouTube channel, which is under the same name, Rising Phoenix Martial Arts. And we have our podcast on there where we interview martial arts professionals and ask them questions about the martial arts and have conversations. And for that reason, we call it Conversations from the Hearth. We'd love for you to swing over there and join our channel and listen to our dialogue.
Very cool. Well, thank you again, John, for all the information. And folks, do reach out to him. I know from personal experience that he loves to geek out about this stuff. So if you ask the questions, he will answer them. And if he doesn't know the answer, he'll find someone who does.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for watching. See you next week. For now, stay safe. The best time to make your family safer is yesterday. The second best is right now. So take a minute to identify one thing you learned from this interview that you can take action on today. And another you can make a longer-term project. Speaking of action, if I earned it today, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. I'm not sure why it helps as much as it does, but it's absolutely essential for a growing channel like this one. If you'd like to support this mission even more deeply, you can sign up for a newsletter and bonus content free over at our Patreon. You'll find the link here. As always, thanks for listening. Stay safe. See you next time.